Kshitiz Khanal. I am research assistant at Kathmandu Living Lab. I am engaged in a project called expansion and use of open mapping infrastructure for sustainable development, and Dr. Namra inside this hall is the principal investigator of the research. Now, when we are talking about sustainable development, let's start with humanity's greatest challenges. So these are some of the greatest challenges that we are currently facing today: conflict and terror, hunger, economic disparity, and more. There are more challenges that we need to solve. These are all lurking over our head. But on top of that, we are running out of time because of the activities, because of the anthropogenic activities in the last century or so. There has been changes to the global system, changes to the earth systems, and the earth systems are responding. As a result of which, we are seeing many disasters like the flood in South Asia and America. The picture you can also see here. And the changes to the global earth systems are unprecedented, and it might be irreversible, and the human existence on the earth might be under threat. So, to tackle these challenges, 193 member states of the United Nations adopted the Sustainable Development Agenda, in which they all agreed to try to achieve the 17 Sustainable Development Goals by 2030, starting from 2016. Now that we have a case for sustainable development, let's start with how open mapping infrastructure can contribute to sustainable development, or let's start with what open mapping infrastructure is. So, geography is often called the mother of all sciences, or the science of all sciences. And geography has obvious links to development, and by extension sustainable development. And also, a study by the National Research Council, it mentions that online maps are the next utility. That means that in the future we will not be able to imagine our lives without online maps. We will be using online maps for our daily navigation. We will be using online maps for development sector planning, carrying out projects, and everything. So now, in the picture we see a road, and a road is an infrastructure, but it's not the retaining wall on the side or the blacktop that makes the infrastructure. It's also the traffic rules, the legislation, the people who use the road, the education that the people who need to have to use the roads. These all make the infrastructure. And when we are talking about open mapping infrastructure, it's not only about the portal that we use to access the open map or the digital maps, it's also about the mapping software, it's also about the data, it's also about the community who makes the maps, who uses the maps, and finally it's also about the codes of openness that the community abides by. These all and possibly a few more elements make the whole open mapping infrastructure. Now, how can open mapping infrastructure contribute to sustainable development? There are two ways by which open mapping infrastructure can contribute to sustainable development. One is to achieve the sustainable development, and the next is to measure progress in the sustainable development goals. So, in achieving the sustainable development goals, open map infrastructure can help in job creation and economic growth. Like many companies like Mapillary, Mapbox, and Kathmandu Living Labs is creating jobs and helping economic growth. Similarly, we can also use the map data for accountability and better citizen participation, information sharing, and improve public service delivery. Similarly, in measuring the progress of sustainable development goals, the data in OpenStreetMap infrastructure can be used to assess the impact of SDG projects. So that is another way it can help. Now, coming to the final slide. So far, we have established that open mapping infrastructure can contribute to sustainable development in two ways. But what do we need to do next? So the next is we need to formulate a strategy to use open mapping infrastructure for sustainable development. And based on the research that we have been doing in our project, here are some of my suggestions. Like increase the use of open mapping infrastructure or OSM in civic life development sector and all. And as we know, by virtue of network effect, the value of a product or service increases as the number of users increases. That means we need to use more to gain more value, and other things are identify the data that is needed to achieve and track sustainable development goals. And maybe we might also need to create separate tax in OSM in order to measure progress in sustainable development goals. Thank you.
Thank